Sail, swim, but walk not. There is no safety in the sky. Row beneath the roots, and make sure to tell no lies. Kirishima reads the next verse out loud. The crew should be thinking about this too, now that the first step is finished. First part is clear, as usual. Don't get in the water. But the sky isn't safe either. My guess is that there's going to be a tunnel or cave of some sort when we reach the proper entrance. It might look daunting, but my guess is that it's the safest way to go. The crap in the last line is beyond me. Maybe it'll make more sense when we see it. It doesn't make any more sense when they see it. They followed the oyster path to a small cove of the island, and a good thing too, because rocks suddenly sliced through the waters all around them. And if the sun had set any sooner before they reached the bay, they'd have been goners. The clue they secured was the only thing keeping them from sinking the ship, as far as Kirishima could tell. But now, with a narrow tunnel ahead of them, even in the morning light so dark they can't tell if the crepitus will fit, their journey has reached yet again a standstill, and Bakugo is getting impatient. Why didn't Mike just fucking tell us where the treasure is? He roars, slamming his fist onto the side of the ship. Relax. The poem says to row. That's fucking clear enough. Let's get in the fucking rowboats and move in. We don't know what that last line means. And we aren't going to waltz on in and die on the third paragraph. Kirishima tunes them out. They really would get nowhere at this point. But until Bakugo made the call, no one was going to move. Times like this really made Kirishima wish Mina was his quartermaster instead. He sits on the deck with Sero, looking up at the lush forest that grows around them. It's really nice. Strange, though. Yeah, I guess so. No birds. Kirishima listens, and finds he's right. There aren't any calls, no chittering of animals. He stands up and looks over the edge of the ship, eyes scanning the water. No fish either. Think the water's poisonous? Kirishima pouts his lip in thought. The trees seem fine, but maybe they're used to it. Maybe something's scaring them away. Mina was rambling about something like that at one point. Sero grins. Kirishima smiles back, nodding. Anyways, we're moving out. Mina is standing nearby, not even trying to hide her content grin. She must have won him over good. Quartermaster's orders. Kirishima lifts an eyebrow at her as he goes to help ready the rowboats. She throws back her head and laughs. I like the way you think, Kiri. I'll see if Bakugo would ever give me that raise. Maybe wait to ask till after we've gotten the treasure. Smart man. The rowboats are quick work. Mina, Bakugo, Hatsume, and Shoji are in the first. Kirishima rows behind them, the quiet, newest recruit Koda sitting beside him. He's with Sato and Sero, making 9 in their crew in total if they're counting Shoji's Blackbird. They enter the cave. Kirishima expected it to be cold with how dark it is, but there's not much heat lost. The crew's voice falls to whispers as the darkness surrounds them. He squints ahead and he thinks his eyes are finally adjusting. Hey, Hatsume, move your torch towards the side a little. Kirishima hears Mina's voice. He watches as the flame gets a little closer to the wet brush that falls into the tunnel's gully. His eyes widen. There are ridges and ridges of what looks like footpaths, crawling from the sides of the tunnel and up into the countless gaps and spaces of trees. No wonder you had to row. If they had followed a path from the beginning, they'd be lost in no time. There'd be no way to follow the water in this darkness. The leaves were too thick to even suggest it. The river is verging. Hatsume calls back to them, her voice quiet but still echoing. Kirishima winces. There are a handful of ways to go. Heading, Captain? He's thinking. Kirishima nods. They couldn't be careless. He blinks up at the ceiling of the cave. Not rock, but leaves and logs and ferns and vines, all molted together to create a dripping canopy. It barely moves. If there's a breeze, Kirishima can't feel it, but he can see the slow rise and fall of the flora, as though the whole island itself were floating along in the sea. What was the last line of this verse again? Koda asks. My memory isn't the best when it comes to poems and the like. Make sure to tell no lies. Koda nods and turns back to himself, fingers gripping his chin as he thinks. Kirishima watches him as he furrows his brow, bald head wrinkling intensely, then smoothing out as he turns back to him. I think we have to go north. Not telling a lie is telling the truth, right? That means we have to stay true, and that's north. If our poet is a nautical person, it might be worth some consideration. You're the most well-spoken pirate I've ever met, Sato says, holding back a laugh. Then you've never met Endeavor's son. We'll give it a go. Tell the captain. Koda sits up straight in nervousness, but clears his throat, his voice timid as it carries across the waters between them. He explains his thoughts, and Bakugo's growl of approval rumbles its way back. North it is. Kirishima rows up closer to the leading boat. He hears the click and whir of Bakugo's compass as he settles beside them. Onward. And onward they go. When the sky's a friend, and your path is narrow and black, favor the river's shore. I promise you'll make it back. The river's getting low. Kirishima looks over the edge, Sero rowing now. It was tiring having to wind around a tunnel where the water barely flowed. Kirishima lowers his torch a little. It's all the oysters again. The black ones. Would you say it's time to walk? Not yet. We should wait for the canopy to open. When we can see the sky, we'll know we're in the right spot. Think I forgot what blue looks like. Sero heaves another row. His oars hit the oysters below, the sound dull beneath the water. It's hard to know what time it is in here. The time comes slowly, though Kirishima's bones feel like it's well into the night. The sky above them that peeks through the brush is bright blue, and when the sun filters through the leaves to dance on the sparkling water, it feels like midday. Kirishima stretches his arms over his head. Time to land, lub. Sero quips as they drag their rowboats to the rocky shore. All the rocks are covered in white lichens, snails, and shells that crunch beneath their feet as they follow the only clear path ahead of them. Kirishima reaches out a hand to touch the near vertical face of the wall and runs his fingers over the large stones. They've almost got a pattern, like something cut them to look like this. Many people have lived here, long before us, I mean. The thought makes Kirishima feel small. They walk for a long time, the forest eerily quiet around them. The only sound is from the ocean breaking waves in the distance. Before Kirishima knows it, they're steadily making their way upward. It's gotten a bit noisier, hasn't it? Hatsume turns behind her to take a look at the crew following behind. I reckon the river starts to flow somewhere. Must be it. I hope we don't have to cross it. Nothing's worse. Kirishima agrees. They don't have their boats anymore, and he's still not all that strong at swimming. The thought takes him back. It feels like another lifetime where he was held in Bakugo's arms, being kissed under the water. He scrunches his nose in irritation. Where was that relationship? Where was all that giddiness and love? Of course the feelings you have stop being so sporadic over time, but they shouldn't feel as uncertain as this. You out of breath? Huh. Mina startles him from his thoughts. Sighing a lot. Mina claps him on the shoulder. Come on, Bakugo's so far ahead he's probably forgotten he has a crew. Kirishima follows close behind her, pushing leaves out of the way as they bounce back. He wonders if they should do a roll call. The brush has gotten so thick again. The rigid path remains, though, so he keeps his gaze towards the ground. It doesn't do any good, however, when Mina stops suddenly and he runs into her, pushing her forward. Sero slams into his back behind him, and up ahead Kirishima hears Bakugo bark at them to shut up. There's a ledge, so be fucking careful, idiots. Kirishima pushes through the rest of the crew, and his stomach lurches at the sudden lack of ground before him. A gulch cuts deep into the island, the river so stagnant before now rushing powerfully below. If it weren't for the sound, Kirishima would almost believe the white spray of the water rising to be clouds beneath them. He's not sure if he's ever been in a place so high up in his life. Reach to the heavens and cross the swaying, brittle sky, a couple for one, and leave none behind. It looks like this is our brittle sky. Bakugo turns swiftly to face the crew. He eyes them over. Kirishima is afraid he'll step backwards and fall. We'll cross the bridge 2 at a time. Kirishima stands up slowly, legs already shaking. He eyes the bridge, so thin and ropey that he hadn't even noticed it before amongst the awesome backdrop of which it spanned. He'd walked on land for most of his life. Then he joined the family business and walked a lot more on sea. That alone took some getting used to, but he'd never walked on the sky before. His stomach does another flip. Bakugo eyes him warily. Mina and I are going first. Make pairs. I'll call when we're over. Mina practically crawls on top of Bakugo as they start walking, and Kirishima's relieved he's not the only one terrified. But as they make their way further, and Kirishima watches as little pieces of debris creak loose from the ropes and old wood, and the bridge begins to sway, his nervousness goes towards his friends instead. He feels sweat stick his shirt to his back as he waits for Bakugo's voice to boom across the way. It takes what feels like forever, but finally Kirishima hears the go-ahead. Hatsume and Koda go next, then Sero and Shoji. When Shoji steps onto the bridge, it creaks worryingly. They aren't out very far yet, but there's nothing beneath them. Maybe you should go alone, Shoji. You're big enough for two. We can't do that, he says, hands holding tight to the rope railing. Someone would be on their own. Tokoyami caws in agreement from his shoulder. They walk forward a little more, and Kirishima hears the snapping of a board and Sero's panicked yell. Shit, fuck. Sero yells again. Kirishima breathes in relief. What's wrong? He can barely make out Mina's bellowing. Shoji's two fucking people, that's what's wrong. Sero screams back, panic still straining his voice. Mina yells something back, but Kirishima doesn't catch it over Sero's added expletives. What? Kirishima shouts, cupping his ear for the reply, as though it'd do any good. Tokoyami, he has to fly! Mina screams over. Kirishima catches the end of the next sentence. Cursed! Shoji is nodding in agreement to whatever she said, and is tucking his fingers beneath Tokoyami's feet. Fly. 3 souls cannot cross at once. Kirishima watches anxiously as they continue, but they make it across without another hitch. Kirishima suddenly believes in the Blackbird's curse a whole lot more. Here we go. Sato nods, jaw set. Kirishima steps on before him, bravely making his way out. The bridge sways beneath him more violently than he imagined it would. Sato not yet on the boards. It's too light, Kirishima calls back. Sato is gripping the post at the edge, but not 1 foot yet above the nothingness below. We need the weight to keep going, Sato. Come on. It's not so bad once you're out. Kirishima's lies seem to work, because Sato inches his way forward and Kirishima feels the bridge steady some under the extra weight. He turns again, just focusing on putting 1 foot in front of the other. The air whips around his face, taking his breath away, and he daren't look down beyond the worryingly crude cuts of wood. He feels his bones ache as the other side clears before him, and when his feet touch the solid earth, he crumples to his knees with just enough room for Sato to do the same just behind him. He takes shaky breaths, ears soon turning into the celebratory whoops and hollers of the crew. He wipes an arm across his face. His eyes are wet, but he's not sure if it's from the wind or his fear. We should set up camp. The evening's drawing near, and we don't know what we'll have to climb over next. The crew readily agrees. Fear takes a lot out of you. Kirishima helps set up the fire pit and pots for a small meal. He feels powerful after passing such a feat, but also as though he could sleep for 1,000 years. He eats his stew with gusto, burning his tongue on the liquid, but unable to keep himself from eating fast. It's been too long since his last proper meal, and he feels himself strengthen with each gulp. Kirishima wastes no time in scoping out for a flat lay of land. He sets down his bedroll a little ways away from the campsite, still in view for safety, but far enough for a bit of peace. On his side of the gulch, the trees were much sparser, and he can actually see the sky, slowly fading to deep blue above the trees. The lull of the river a comforting sound now that it was farther away, Kirishima stretches out, excited and tired over how far they've come. Closes his eyes and lays back. Didn't plan on sleeping next to me. Kirishima opens his eyes at Bakugo's grumbling. He frowns up at him. I just found a place where it was flat. Doesn't mean anything. I assumed you'd come over if you wanted to. Bakugo scowls and throws his bedroll down next to him. Why are you being so testy? Shouldn't you be happy we've come this far? Kirishima's not sure what's pressing him to talk so shortly. He knew that he was only going to egg him on, but something about it felt good. Something about it felt like he deserved to do so. Kirishima knows deep inside that he doesn't like these emotions, but he spits them out all the same. Shouldn't you be doing something a little more than sighing and staring at flowers? Mina and I have been busting our asses over the clues, and you've dawdled along, poking your nose into every leaf you've never seen before. You don't want me anywhere near you. He was too tired to worry about laying it all on the table. Katsuki, you're creating this distance, not me. You know I made a mistake. I know it. But there's a point where it's not my fault anymore. I'm trying, and you have to, too. A relationship isn't one-sided, Katsuki. It's me and it's you. Kirishima ends in a huff, squaring his jaw against the tears that so often came up uninvited when arguing. Since when were we talking about us? Get some sleep. No. He wanted to scream. Can't you? Don't you see? Bakugo watches him as Kirishima growls at his words not coming out properly, feeling more and more frustrated under his gaze. He crumples his hands into his bedroll and takes a breath to steady himself. You're angry with me, I know. You're hurt, and it's hard to feel right again, I know. Kirishima breathes in again, steadying himself. But pushing me away isn't going to help, Katsuki. Your goal's to hurt me, it's working. Because here I am loving you, my heart wide open, and you're rubbing salt into it all. Bakugo's lip is quivering in what he thinks is anger, but Kirishima's eyes open wide at the tears in his eyes. Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you... Shut up. Bakugo falls to his knees on his mat, not fully unfolded beside Kirishima's. You're right, like always. Well, I wouldn't say always. He laughs out of nervousness. It wasn't right to yell at you just now. Think it was fine. Kirishima is glad the crew is further off, though they probably heard him shout anyways. Though yelling around Bakugo wasn't exactly unheard of course. This is why I wanted to talk. I'm afraid something will happen and we'll mess up the clues or make a mistake, just because our heads aren't in the right place. What's there to say? Bakugo throws up his hands. You say you want to talk, but honestly, what the fuck are we supposed to do? Just go back to normal? We already know it's not that easy. Well, I think we have to do our best to make it normal. Instead of avoiding one another, we have to go on like it's normal. So fake it. It doesn't feel real. But what I feel, I know that's real. Bakugo is silent for a while. Kirishima waits, patient and nervous. I know it too. Then it's just time. I know it's kind of empty, and it just begs for impatience, but... He nods and Kirishima feels his stomach leap as Bakugo's hands find his own. I'll do better. Kirishima squeezes his hand. I will too. Bakugo looks into his eyes for what feels like the first time in days. Kirishima smiles and Bakugo does too, laughing a little. We walked on the sky today. Think we can manage a little love. Yeah, me too. Bakugo kisses him softly, and it's been much too long since it's felt this true. Kirishima wraps his arms around Bakugo's middle and holds him tight. Good night, love. I love you. Night, Katsuki. He breathes in his sweat and the dirt of the ground, the damp of the trees, and smiles, feeling a step forward once again. I love you too.